Steph, they were coming in here talking about lack of focus, lack of knowing the game plan. How do you summarize kind of what you saw out there?
I was disappointed because I felt like there was a lack of competitive fire. With the exception of about 2 5-minute spurts, our attention to detail was poor. I'm not sure if it's not knowing the game plan as much as, because if it's not knowing the game plan, then that's a whole nother conversation, as much as not executing the game plan. Our attention to detail, undisciplined. I felt like our energy and our competitive fire was not there, and that's disappointing.
I guess, why do you think you had some of these inconsistencies when it comes to focus and engagement, things like that?
I'd say discipline more so than focus. I think this is a group that focuses, but you can focus, and then you have to be able to go out and be disciplined enough to execute it, right? I'm not sure. We're, as coaches, that's our job to figure it out. Why it is. You've seen it in spurts. You've seen it in moments. You've seen it with certain lineups. So for us, finding those lineups that we've seen it with consistently and maybe keeping those together. There's always going to be adjustments when you're working people back into the lineup. There's no question about that. But the competitiveness and the attention to detail, and willingness to play with multiple levels of effort. Prime examples when we get defensive stops, but then they get multiple offensive rebounds. That's 1-2. That's competitive fire. And that's unacceptable.
Yeah, you had that lineup change, kind of putting Caitlin in for Lexi instead of Ari. Just what did you like about Caitlin and Ari starting the game together and Lexi coming off the bench?
Yeah, I like the ability to have two primary ball handlers on the floor, particularly with a team that comes aggressively, in the two-man game. Being able to play off of one another, being able to give the opponent some different looks, and quite frankly, for C specifically, not having to have her play under duress 94 feet the entire time she's on the floor. So there were some things that we liked about it. There were some things that we don't. So we'll continue to work with that.
Just in general, with Caitlin returning to the floor today, a little short of 25 minutes, how did you think she looked out there? And she said it might take a little bit of time for her to get her win back, but nothing, just kind of the normal thing you'd expect out of that point.
Yeah, I thought there were periods of time where she really looked good. I was really pleased, especially the first play of the game with, I think she had like 2 or 3 deflections on that first possession defensively. I don't know, maybe I'm naive, but I don't worry about Caitlin getting back into the flow offensively. I worry about, I wouldn't say worry, but I think my biggest concern is when we reintegrate her, how do we continue to keep our ball movement and getting the ball going, not just side to side, but baseline to baseline. But I was a little bit concerned, defensively, just lots of movement, lots of lateral movement. I thought she looked good at times, and I think that's just building consistency and building her endurance and all of that. So I was pleased.
In the mini part of the performance, Timpson had a wonderful game all around. What kind of growth have you seen from her, steadily like that, or just waiting for that kind of moment?
Yeah, it's been steady growth. She's been earning more minutes. For every young player, coming into the league, particularly post position, it's learning the feel and her ability to continue to grow, continue to get her work in outside of practice time with Keith, our player development coach, and being ready when her number's called. You can see she's got really good instincts on the defensive end of the floor. She's continuing to find her way on the offensive end of the floor. She's bouncy, so she gives us a different type of look, on the interior. And there's no substitute for experience. So in some areas where opponents might take advantage, it's just experience. And I think she's come so far in these last 4 or 5 games and anticipate her continued growth.
I know you mentioned a little bit about Caitlin and integrating herself back in the offense, but in general, with shooting 31%, some of the turnovers, what did you think was the biggest issue on that end of the floor?
Yeah, I think our decision making was not very good. At times I felt like we passed up open shots early, sometimes in shot clock, and then over penetrated, and we weren't getting better shots. A team like Golden State, who's really solid defensively, who try to force you into tough twos. When we drew them into the paint, we tried to shoot over 4 or 5 people instead of our seeing our easy passes out. Sometimes we've seen, with our group that physicality lends us to getting tunnel vision. So we got to continue to work that. I think sometimes some of the turnovers in transition just maybe a little too overzealous, a little too anxious. Those moments where we're making a run, we cut it to 5, and then you give up an offensive rebound that starts a 9-1 run. I mean, those are pivotal moments. I think we gave up 10 offensive rebounds in the second half while we're playing from behind. You can't do that. So really our discipline to the details and not skipping steps to look to the next thing. We have to take care of the thing that's right in front of us. That might be an on-ball screen coverage. That might be a first screen or first action in offense. But we have to put first things first in everything that we do.